Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. So welcome to the chilly chamber this morning. At least there's no heat wave in here. So with that, we're going to get started today. We have a fairly big agenda from the looks of things here. So I'm now going to move to the approval of the agenda with an addendum and also with the addition of a piece of other business. So I've had a couple of people inquire about the new city website and the ability to access the heritage materials. So I'm going to also suggest that we have a bit of a conversation at the end of our meeting regarding that and just give some feedback to staff to take back so that we can make sure that we're getting the materials needed, okay? So with that, I need a mover and a seconder for the agenda. So Anne and Alex, and all in favor? And that passes, thank you. All right, so next we're on to the confirmation of the minutes. So this was the May 15th meeting, so I need a mover and a seconder for those minutes. Okay, Alex and Anne, you guys are tag teaming this morning, and all in favor? Wonderful, thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? All right, seeing none. There are no delegations, no briefings, so we're right into business. We have no pre-consultations, no policy development implementation matters, so we're on to Stream 2 permits. And so the application for 234 to 242 University Avenue, so I'm going to ask staff to introduce the application, please.
Morning, everybody. Through you, Madam Chair. 234 to 242 University Avenue, also known as Snowden Terrace, is located on the west side of University Avenue, mid-block between Johnson and Earl Streets. The properties consist of 5 beige stucco-clad row houses approximately 2 stories tall with a relatively deep rear yard built circa 1880. The applicant seeks approval to restore the original terrace, replace the existing rear yard terrace additions, create 2 freestanding buildings in the rear yard, and complete landscape alterations. Specifically, there are 4 major parts to the application, including alterations to / restoration of the original terrace, the redevelopment of the rear yard terrace additions, the construction of 2 rear yard freestanding buildings, and various landscape alterations. Some key parts of the alterations to / restoration of the original terrace include significant repairs to the terrace, including the window / door surround / details, scroll work, cornice trim, stone foundation, and existing brick chimneys, reinstatement of the rough cast stucco finish in 2 brick chimneys like the existing, replacement of all vinyl windows with heritage appropriate windows with exterior muntin bars, all wooden porches with unfinished gray concrete porches with steel railings, existing doors with more appropriate doors, and existing rooftop asphalt shingles with like-for-like asphalt shingles, the installation of a new roof drainage system and a fire hose attachment, removal of unit-specific utilities and associated wire / housing, limited expansion of rear elevation openings to accommodate new attached additions. Key parts of the rear yard terrace additions include the replacement of 4 existing rear additions with 4 2-story additions, all of which will be below the rooftop terrace peak. The rear yard additions will have horizontal cement board siding, rooftop asphalt shingles, architrave molding, sash modern windows, and an associated porch for each addition. The southernmost pair of additions will also include a basement mechanical room, and the walls and porches of these additions will also include AC mounted units. I'm almost done, I promise. Key parts of the rear yard freestanding buildings include the construction of 2 matching 2.5-story buildings with a total of 4 units with 24 bedrooms. Each new building will include a rooftop mechanical penthouse that will be below the roof ridge of the main terrace building and will be accessible by the concrete staircase. Buildings will be set back approximately 5.5 to 4.2 meters from the proposed rear additions. Each building will be clad in horizontal cement board like the new rear additions and have a modern design with corner windows as well as multiple sliding windows. A covered bicycle parking structure is attached to each western wall. And key parts of the landscape alterations include the replacement of the existing rear yard gravel parking lot with a grass-covered courtyard with paved paths, and may include a pad-mounted transformer. And the rear yard will be surrounded by 1.8 meter privacy fencing. So these alterations are subject to conditions, and I wanted to highlight a few of the important ones before you all today. That Heritage Planning staff review/approve project details like the downspout/east troughs, front entrance transoms, front doors, window design/material, carriageway barriers, and front porch railing design prior to installation. That all repairs to wooden features be done with like materials and matching existing features in scale and profile. That the remaining rough cast stucco and chimneys will be retained/preserved and be used as an example when recreating related features. That bond breaker is used between the limestone foundation and concrete porches. That the exterior be documented prior to alterations. Should a pad-mounted transformer or other large ground-mounted utility be required, it shall be placed in a location which is acceptable to the city, and best efforts shall be made to ensure it is not visible through the carriageway from the street, nor be located in the front of the terrace. Should a barrier be introduced to avoid vehicle access through the carriageway, the finalized design shall be small, simple/sympathetic to avoid drawing excessive attention. And finally, all masonry works shall be completed in accordance with the city's policy on masonry restoration in heritage buildings. I would be happy to address questions related to this application, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to move to the committee for questions. So does anyone have a question on this application? Okay, Anne, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to know what plans there are for the carriageway. That is a heritage attribute of that property. I'd wonder how protection would be to have cars not going in there, and also the ramifications for garbage.
Okay, go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair. So for the carriageway, the idea is that the existing rough cast stucco, that is the last remaining part of that original feature of the building, will be maintained and be used as an example for the rest of the building. In terms of the protection of that feature, that hasn't really been determined at this time. It would have to be likely done when the construction details are put forward. And then the last thing I would mention is that to date, there isn't really a plan yet to put bollards or anything in the way to prevent vehicle traffic going through, but we have made flexibility in this approval to ensure that if that is done, that not only is there flexibility to put it there, but that staff will have some say in terms of the design and features there. And the wording I wanted to ensure was that it was simple and sympathetic and that it wouldn't overpower that entrance through the carriageway. So I apologize that I can't give a more detailed answer at this time, but I do hope that gives some information. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, are there any other questions from committee? Councillor Oosterhoff, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, Madam Chair and everyone. I'm just curious about that question. I mean, obviously that carriageway is an important part of the function of the building. So is that new information for me that we could actually declare it unusable? It seems extreme. It's pretty unlikely, I'm sure. And is it actually enforceable?
Staff, do you want to go ahead, or do we want to have the applicant address the issue?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not really able to provide some details on that at this time. I'm not sure that's something we could regulate through this particular process, but I'm more than happy to toss it over to the applicant and their team to see if they would like to provide some more details on this. Thank you.
Well, just to be clear, it's not something I'm asking, Madam Chair. I'm asking, is that something we would? I wouldn't want us to. I just wanted to be clear of why we would mention it cannot be used.
Okay, perhaps you can provide clarity to Councillor Oosterhoff's inquiry, and then if the applicant would like to reply on what their intent is with the carriageway.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm speculating a bit, so correct me if I'm wrong there, Member Stevens, but I want to make a point of saying that I'm not sure. I think the main thing is to preserve this important last original feature of the property, and that the amount of, because there will be two buildings in the rear yard, that there will be more traffic coming through, whether it's by people. And I think based on internal discussions at the Heritage Roundtable, for example, that we were talking that what if there were vehicle traffic coming through to deliver packages? Now, my understanding, and according to the plans, there are no parking structures back there. There are bicycle parking structures that can accommodate vehicles that way. So I think that's kind of where that one's coming from. But in terms of stopping vehicles coming through, I'm not really able to provide more comment on that. I apologize. And please correct me if I'm wrong there, Member Stevens.
I'll go to the applicant because they're here.
Hi there. My name's Alex Adams from the Boulevard Group. I'm representing the owners on the project. For clarity, I think the question was, could we do something to stop vehicles going back there? And I think Councillor Oosterhoff's question was, are we blocking off the whole carriageway, was kind of what I took. The intent is the carriageway will still be used. That's going to be the main access to the rear of the property for both pedestrians and bicycles. There will be no vehicles going back there. The intent is this project has 0 parking. We're open to discussing bollards. We certainly wouldn't want to gate across the carriageway because, like I say, that's going to be the main access. But yeah, I mean, I think there'll be a barrier curb on University Avenue anyway, which will stop vehicles actually going through there, whereas at the moment it's a mountable curb. So I think that is to be removed anyway. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarity. Councillor Oosterhoff, do you have any other questions? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. That's very helpful to have that clarified. And I guess I just wonder, does that affect a fire protection and that kind of thing too? Is there ever, or have they had, obviously, the fire department approves of this type of development and their ability to do their work?
Okay, and that'll come before planning and the other areas. So we'll stick to the heritage aspects today, but just we're clear on what's being proposed. Any other questions from you, Rita? Okay.
No, that's good.
Then I'm going to go to Peter and Gunnar. You are up. Did you want to ask questions after Peter?
I do. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So Peter, please go ahead.
Have I got the floor? Okay.
Yeah, this also is probably a question for much later on, but it's the one that we talked about before, and that is of garbage collection, and I'm thinking of garbage collection within the building and then on garbage day. I hope, and I'm not going to ask what has been done, but I hope that there have been plans so that we do not end up with a courtyard full of blue boxes and whatever else lying around. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. That's not a heritage matter, but I think they'll take note of that. So we're going to go to Gunnar. So Gunnar, go ahead.
Your mic, Gunnar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am not satisfied that waste management on this project has been adequately addressed.
Garbage is not the purview of this committee, so just if you could stick to the actual heritage concerns. I think Peter has expressed a concern about what's going to happen with that, and that'll come when we're discussing this at planning. So do you have a heritage question?
Madam Chair, I respectfully submit that I cannot accept your ruling on this one. Waste management is very much a heritage issue, particularly in heritage building. Therefore, this project has not addressed waste management adequately or even sufficiently.
Technically, waste management is not part of the considerations for a heritage application. And I'm happy to confirm the criteria and those things with both the clerk and the staff to provide extra clarity on what the mandate of this committee is. But that will come at planning. And any member of this committee is welcome to attend the planning meetings as a member of the public. And so I'd urge you to come if you have concerns about that.
May I respond to this, Madam Chair?
I'll allow it, if we can keep it brief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've made it a point to see as many heritage properties in this city as possible in the time that I've been on this position. And it's one common denominator was virtually all. Where at garbage day before, 2 or 3 days afterwards, it's a mess, and at a lot of locations. This one has the makings of being one of the worst. The density is simply the greatest that I've seen. It is a problem, and it should be a heritage issue, because it affects the heritage value of the property. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, so any further questions from committee? Okay, seeing none. Are there any questions from the public? All right, so seeing none, I'd like to call the vote on this matter so that the alterations to the property at 234 to 242 University Avenue be referred to the Director of Heritage Services for the issuance of final approval in accordance with the details described in the application, which was deemed complete on May 21st, 2024, with said alterations to include the restoration of the historic terrace, replacement of the existing rear yard terrace additions, the creation of 2 freestanding buildings in the rear yard, and the landscape alterations. And I'm not going to read all of the specifications, but could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Okay, Councillor Oosterhoff, and someone to second? Anne, thank you. Okay, and all in favor? All right, and that passes with Gunnar opposed. Thank you. Okay, so we're on to our next application. So this is 178 Ordnance Street. And so if staff could please introduce this application.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this property is on the south side of Ordnance Street. It's adjacent to McBurney Park. It's a mid-block between Barrie and Clergy Streets, designated under Part 4 of the Heritage Act. The application that's before you today under Section 33 is to request approval to remove and reconstruct a rear side entry structure and to enlarge an existing rear addition by adding a second floor. The entirety of the addition is at the rear of the 1840s limestone building. The proposed east and south elevations of the 2-story addition portion are to be clad in a vertical wood siding, while the west elevation will be clad in a metal vertical siding in matching tones. The proposed cladding on the single-story vestibule is a horizontal wood siding, and the roofing on the main addition will be a standing seam metal, and the roofing on the vestibule will be a wood shingle. In terms of our analysis, the applicants propose to create additional all-season living space by modifying this basic form of the existing rear addition. And not only is the proposed addition to the rear of the historic stone building, but as an existing structure, the current addition has become an accepted part of the heritage building for over 50 years now. The limestone building sits prominently on the street adjacent to McBurney Park. And by enlarging then modifying the existing addition at the rear of the building, the proposed alterations will have very little impact on the prominence of the stone building from the public realm. Further, creating more functional space will allow the owners to continue to use their property and thus invest in this heritage resource and promoting its conservation into the future. We circulated this application to our usual technical agencies. Various technical comments were received and many have been included as conditions of approval. It was also circulated to this committee. We received 2 written comments, which are in your agenda. They've been compiled and attached and circulated to the owner for their consideration. And Madam Chair, staff recommend approval of this application with the conditions attached. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to move to the committee for questions on this application. Okay, I'm seeing no questions, so any members of the public? And again, seeing none. All right, so I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder to approve the recommendation for the alterations to the property at 178 Ordnance Street. Okay, Alex and Peter, and all in favor? All right, and that carries. Thank you. All right, we're on to our next items of business. So these are Stream 3 permits, approval through council authority. So if staff could introduce the application for 81 Gore Street, please.
Through you, Madam Chair. 81 Gore Street is located mid-block between Wellington Street and King Street East, and it's approximately 200 meters east of City Park. The property consists of a two-story building with a brick facade and side gable roof that is currently undergoing construction activities in accordance with a previous approval, P18-006-2021, my apologies, it was passed in 2022. The applicant seeks approval to install wood clapboard siding on all elevations/additions and reinstate a previously existing wooden trim, i.e. plinth board, corner trim, and frieze board, based on physical evidence found beneath the existing siding/facade, as well as install similar sympathetic wood trim on the new additions. These alterations are subject to conditions. A few important ones include that the applicant consider using a slightly different color tone for the rear addition to further differentiate new versus old as a response to a committee comment, that Heritage Planning staff review/approve the finalized window surround/trim, other wood accents for the rear addition to ensure they are appropriately sympathetic but differentiated from the original building. That the repair and replacement of windows undertaken in conformity with the City of Kingston window policy and guidelines, and should any siding require a different design/material due to building code concerns, those changes shall be provided to Heritage Planning staff for review/approval prior to construction. I would be happy to address any questions related to this application. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to go to the committee for questions. Does anyone have questions regarding this application? Okay, seeing none and no members of the public with questions? All right, then we're going to call the vote on 81 Gore Street. So can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Alex again, and Anne. All right, all in favor? Thank you very much. Okay, so the next property up for consideration is 221 Green Bay. So if I could have staff introduce the application, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is 221 Green Bay Road. It's a waterfront parcel on the northwest side of Green Bay Road. It's designated under Part 5 of the Heritage Act as part of the Berryfield Heritage Conservation District, and it's rated as a non-heritage building by the district plan. An application is before the committee under Section 42, requesting approval of a comprehensive landscape plan for the property. Now, while vegetation and tree planting are exempt from needing approval under the Act, according to the district plan, the proposed plan also includes the erection of a 3.6 meter by 3.6 meter pergola over a sunken courtyard created by a short retaining wall, an approximately 1 meter tall white picket fence around the perimeter of the property with 2 arbor gates, a 1.8 meter long sauna structure, and the extensive use of flagstone pavers and limestone steps throughout. There was also some minor like-for-like repairs proposed to the existing front porch. So in terms of our analysis, the proposed changes will not physically impact any built heritage features in the district. However, they will have an impact on the streetscape and character of this area. The lands along the shoreline of Green Bay Road area have been landscaped and altered in recent years with the build out of this street and community. Further landscaping will have a neutral impact on the already altered natural shoreline, and the structures and hard landscaping proposed all comply with the policies and guidelines of the district plan. The application was circulated to our technical agency group. Various comments were received and provided to the applicant, and conditions of approval have been included where appropriate. It was also circulated to this committee. We have 3 written comments we received. There were no substantial concerns. They were provided to the applicants who I know have received them and has considered them. So, Madam Chair, we recommend approval of this application, subject to the conditions in our report. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the committee again for questions on this particular application. Okay, and I'm seeing none and no questions from the public. All right. Then seeing none, we're going to move to vote. So for 221 Green Bay, can I have a mover and a seconder, please? So Alex? Gary? Thank you. And all in favor? Wonderful. All right. So we're now on to notice of intent to designate under the Ontario Heritage Act. So the addresses in question are 140 to 150 Montreal Street, 145 to 147 Montreal Street, and 97 Bay Street, 151 Montreal Street, 153 Montreal Street, 155 Montreal Street, 15 and 17 Rideau Street, 217 to 221 Princess Street, 22 Yonge Street, 3250 Quabbin Road, 3857 to 3889 Seabrook Road, and 790 Front Road. So I'm going to ask staff to introduce the designations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I don't have to read all those addresses out. So the report that we have before us is to provide background regarding the evaluation of these 12 properties to determine their cultural heritage value and interest. It was found that all 12 of the properties exceed the threshold that it was established by the Province of Ontario for designation under the Act. The group before you today includes a diverse mix of resources, such as 2 former farmhouses, 1 frame and 1 limestone, that represent a range of vernacular 19th century construction, a large brick estate, which was once owned by 2 prominent members of the farming community in the west end of the city, a downtown commercial building that was designed by a well-known local architectural firm, a brick row and a limestone row that define the character of a portion of Montreal Street, an example of a simple Georgian limestone double house on Rideau Street, and one of the last surviving buildings associated with the Fisher Brewery in Portsmouth Village. The owners of these properties have been provided with the draft designation bylaws and general information on designation by registered mail. They were invited to an open house on May 22nd, where several members did attend. 2 letters of concern have been provided for your consideration. They're in your agenda package, one from the owner of 140 through 150 Montreal Street, and one from the owner of 145 to 149 Montreal Street. As I mentioned, all 12 of the properties meet the provincial criteria for evaluating cultural heritage value as set out in Ontario Regulation 906. The notice of intent to designate and the draft bylaws have been prepared in accordance with the recent amendments to the Act, and staff recommends serving the notice of intent to the subject properties to ensure their conservation and to enable the city to provide support and resources to the owners and tenants. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that. So I'm going to move to the committee for questions on these properties. Okay, and I don't see any. Are there any members of the public here who wish to ask questions? Okay, seeing none, then I'm going to move to call the vote on moving these forward for designation. So can I have a mover and a seconder? Oh, sorry, Alex? One sec, Alex had his hand up, so that's what. So Gunnar, go ahead. Did you have a question? Oh, you're going to move it. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So I'll let Alex second then. Okay. All right. So with that in mind, any other questions or comments from committee before we call the vote? All right. Seeing none, I'll call the vote then. All in favor? And thank you. That passes. All right. Okay, so we're on to item 6 in our business, recent changes to the Ontario Heritage Act. So I'm going to ask staff to introduce this and bring us up to date. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. The Government of Ontario has recently passed Bill 200, which updates several provincial acts, including the Ontario Heritage Act. The information report circulated for this meeting outlines the changes as they're related to the Ontario Heritage Act. So Bill 200 describes 2 revisions of the process of listing a property on a municipality's heritage register. First, subsection 27 of the Ontario Heritage Act has been amended to extend the date at which listed properties must be removed from the municipal register from December 31st, 2024 to December 31st, 2026. Second, the province has provided guidance on the practice of removing properties from a heritage register with the intention of relisting them after the deadline for removal. The updates described within the information report that was provided will have no impact to the heritage planning work plan. The heritage planning team We'll maintain focus on designations throughout the remainder of 2024 with a proposed status update in the second quarter of 2025. And as indicated, this report is provided for the committee's information. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So does committee have any questions on this? Seems that it's leaving us in a situation unchanged, seeing as we've done a great job of planning for the work that had to be done. So kudos to staff for that, because I think it puts us in a very good position moving forward. Okay, so any public questions with regards to these changes? Okay, so seeing none, that's for information only. There are no working groups. Permit approvals. There's a permit report to committee coming, okay, from June 2024. Okay, all right. So moving on, there's no motions, no notices of motions. So we are on to the other business that I mentioned. So I'm going to basically open the floor to have a bit of a discussion about the concerns regarding the website. So we'll just sort of make the rounds, so anybody who'd like to comment from committee on that. So Anne, go ahead. And then after we have some questions, we'll go back and forth with staff if they have any input to it. Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I work quite often in the HRC doing research. I volunteer. Yesterday, every single thing I went to look at was archived with no access to what I wanted to look for. I found this really frustrating. There isn't even on the main page an access to get to heritage things. So, you know, it's not a very functional website anymore. And just as an experiment, I tried to do citizen business, like tax, whatever. I found I was 20 minutes going through this. It's dreadful.
Okay, thank you. Do any other members of the committee have comments? And I've just been informed very nicely by our clerk that this can't be a back and forth because it's not part of regular business, but your comments will be taken back by staff. Okay, so Peter, go ahead. I see your hands up.
Yeah, thank you. It went on the website at 7 o'clock this morning just to check out this meeting, and the notice at the top of the page informed me that this meeting had already taken place. And I just wonder if somebody has put in that at midnight or at 12:01 a.m. on the 19th of June, all the 19th of June meetings are noted to have been completed. But I think that needs to be looked at.
Okay, thank you for that, unless there's been some sort of time warp going on. Okay, any other comments for staff? Okay, seeing none. I will give staff the opportunity just to comment on any considerations or concern from their perspective, if that's okay.
So through the chair, regarding the issue with the timing, thank you for bringing that up. I was not aware that that was an issue, so I'm going to go through the calendar to make sure none of that happens again. It shouldn't be. We were pretty hopeful that we had put everything in correctly regarding the times of the meetings, but there are two different calendars, so trying to make them play nice can be a little bit difficult. So I will double check this afternoon and make sure everything is correct going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ian. So, Philip, I'm just going to come over to you because Don said he had spoken with you and he couldn't be here today. So, did he share anything in particular?
So, through you, Madam Chair. So I briefly chatted with my team about this, so I'm just going to defer this to Joel here quick, if that's okay. Thank you.
Super, thank you.
And thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. We're aware of these issues that have come up, and we're providing feedback to the website team, but we welcome the comments here today. And any additional comments you have, you can provide to the Heritage Planning email, which is heritageplanning@cityofkingston.ca, and we'll move to address them.
Okay, thank you very much. So, team, if there's anything else you notice as you're trying to do the work of the committee, please forward it to the team and they'll take it back so that we can get it corrected. I think as everyone's aware, when we put a new website or system in place, there's always a few bugs to work out, so we appreciate the feedback. Okay, so with that, there's a couple pieces of correspondence, so I'm duly noting those. The date of the next meeting is July 17th at 9:30 a.m. And now we move to adjournment, so a mover and a seconder. Councillor Oosterhoff, and a seconder? Gunner. All right, thank you. So all in favor, I'm sure we're good with that. Thank you once again for an excellent meeting. And sorry, I meant to actually have staff introduce the intern who's with us, Christine. So why don't we just do that as a courtesy, please?
Absolutely. Yeah, we welcome Christina Piliteri to our team for the summer. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah.